We have cumulatively science over generations that tell us all of this technology is bad. We've just told you something the scientific community taught us. We're not physicists, but physicists tell us this is 100 times more damning than everything that's been bad that we know is bad. The organization you represent works with Stanford University, works with the University of California, worked with Yale University, Dr. Davis, my colleague, Dr. Hardell, a Swedish oncologist. He's done research also. This is the people I've been learning from. As a matter of fact, one of the most brilliant things I've seen in the last year is Dr. Davis when she was at the University of Sydney. It was very, very clear. So I can give you a brief thing. Cancer will happen. It's already happening. Stanford showed that children especially, putting cell phones with 2 and 3G, they get cancer tumors. And I can confirm that because I'm dealing with those kids with cancer tumors. They come to Hippocrates in boatloads today, and cancer was non-existent in children when I began my work a half a century ago. We've all mentioned here, and there's evidence of this. This isn't like crazy people with conspiracy theories. They are altering your mind. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to be stressed? Are you going to be anxious? Are you going to sleep well? Are you not going to sleep well? How about your children who can't have babies? 1/3 of the married people in this country and around the world now, in the developed world, as we say, are struggling to have babies. And it gave birth to something called the fertility industry. That, by the way, those poor women hardly have babies, but they show up at Hippocrates with cancer 5 years later, 4 years later, et cetera. And so the side effects I'm now bringing up too. Neurological problems. I've seen a boom in multiple sclerosis, as an example, and other neuron diseases and neuropathies. And people are sitting in front of televisions with cell phones in front of them, laptop computers on their genitalia. I see testy cancers shooting up like this. Used to be a rare thing. I see ovarian cancers. And cervical cancers are viral, but the amplification of cervical cancers. So that's why a person who's only worried about themselves should really worry about this. Now, let me expound on this. So I went out of my way 4 months ago when I was in Europe to have a meeting with a man that rolled this out. He's a Portuguese gentleman, a Ph.D., who, by the way, lives in Norway, and they are way ahead of us. So much so that the politicians in Europe are saying, we don't want 5G where our families are, because we know it gives you cancer. We know it's neurological, and we know that governments are going to use this to alter your consciousness. And so in Geneva, Switzerland, and in Belgium, where in Belgium the EU is, Geneva is where the UN is, they've just banned 5G. In Brussels. They've just banned it. Where I live in Palm Beach County, because an illustrious character that's running the country now lives, they're trying to ban 5G. So they don't give a damn about you and your families. They know what's going on, and they're basically saying, we don't want our families to be exposed to what your families can be exposed to. Now, these are not things we're making up here. I'd love any of you to challenge anything that we're saying here tonight. These are factual statements. I only come here to give you factual statements. So there is a overwhelming foundational body of evidence on what previous technology has done. We don't have to wait. You know, it sounds like we're a little tenuous here. We're not tenuous. This shit's bad. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill your children. It's going to amplify disease, and there's no question about that.
I agree with all the things that have been said. I'll try to focus on one specific aspect of 5G, that we're going to see more problems within time and the body's response. We know from Dr. Ali Johansson's work out of Sweden that your immune system is suppressed in up to 4G. We know that that dampens your ability to respond to other illnesses with the suppressed immune, and autoimmune as well, by the way. And so with 4G, remember, there are 10 times more bugs in our stomach than there are cells in the body. So when you start disrupting your immune source, you start disrupting everything about the way your body responds. And this man's going to talk a little bit about probiotics and other things that sort of address those kinds of things. There is study work that was fairly recent on 20 gigahertz. It was around 23 gigahertz. It substantiated the trend from up to 4G and found improved propagation with all virus and bacteria. So you can expect what we know in the 4G world will be amplified in the 5G world, and that's really research that's fairly recent, and other than the 90 gigahertz that Terry, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Theodora brought up, which is sort of an important point. It's right in the middle of the spectrum, but we know the immune system is going to be possibly more hampered, and that's going to mean a lot to making sure your body is at the peak of its health when you're exposed. So if you're an individual, you can expect a worsening immune system response to illnesses in general as a result of the exposure.
It is a really pretty serious thing in the, the fact that they banned it in Brussels tells you something really important, because people know. They know the truth of what's going on. So I'm going to emphasize the mental part, because we are looking at an increase in suicide, depression, and anxiety. Big deal. We're looking at as Brian said, a decrease in fertility, an increase in heart disease, which we haven't mentioned as much, but definitely there's an increase of heart disease and disorganization of the heart function. And heart attacks, obviously, we've been talking about cancer, clearly upping diabetes, environmental sensitivity. So it's really there. And it's, if anybody's reading the literature, it's undeniable. And that's the thing we have to kind of get, the seriousness of it. And that kind of helps us get more serious about how we're going to act towards it. So I think it's good what Steve brought up. Hey, there are problems, and they're undeniable problems, and hopefully that will motivate even the most self-centered person for their own protection.
I want to, thank you. There was a study that was just published. It was funded by the American Cancer Society, and it looked at thyroid cancer and cell phone use. And if you don't know, as was talked about, in children, cancer rates are increasing. Thyroid cancer, lymphoma, as well as brain cancer. And they came out with a report that we have on our website. But this particular study that looked at people who use cell phones for a long time and thyroid cancer, they did one initial epidemiology research, and they found suggestions of an increase. But then they looked, and they did another study, which they published, where they looked at the genetics of the people. And once they identified certain genetic markers, they found a statistically significant association between the thyroid cancer with the increased cell phone radiation exposure. So we're all different. We all have different genetic makeups, and there are people who are more susceptible in which the association has been shown in research. So,
I think you're talking about 3 times more likely to get cancer if you have a predisposition and that's recently by Yale. They just released that
by
study.
Yale, that's right. Yeah. They just put this out.
Yeah.
This is a really important study. And by the way, please contact the American Cancer Society and tell them to update their webpage with this important information so everyone can have it. I'm sure they're trying to figure out what to do right now about this study. I mean, it's they've identified.
So let me preface what you're saying, because I don't want anyone listening around the world or in this room to be confused. It doesn't mean if you have a particular type of gene, you're immune to this 5G and 4G and 3G.
No.
When you get into science, what you have to know is they look at a specific area, a very isolated, very refined and confined area. And so that's what this study is reporting. So you may be more susceptible, and 99% of you haven't had gene markers done on you. So, and the other ones are going to have problems too. You may not get that particular form of cancer. That's what they looked at. You may end up with cancer in your liver from it. We don't know that.
In addition, bad news about it is that we've seen proof of breakage of the DNA. So when you kind of look at the bigger picture, it's a total assault, again, from the DNA up on the whole living planet, not just the human beings. As I mentioned, when you disorganize the Schumann resonance and the global electric circuit, all the physiology is disrupted. The electrophysiology and the Schumann resonance, which is kind of what links all of life, not just humans, together, is disrupted. It throws the whole planet, the living planet, out of harmony. And that's what we're really facing. And so it is a direct threat, again, not just to humans, not just the things we're talking about, but to all life on the planet. Now, in addition, they're putting satellites up in what we call the D zone. So I'll mention this. Schumann resonance is the resonance from the Earth up to approximately the D zone. It's somewhere between 37 miles and 55 miles up. And so they're putting the actual satellites right where the resonance is happening. So we're going to look, you're definitely going to see more disruption of the Schumann resonance. And when that's off, as I said, melatonin goes down, more cancer, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases are going down. The other thing...
Do you remember how many satellites and outrageous?
20,000.
20,000.
Yeah. And... yeah, so there's lots of kind of pieces with. Another thing that happens is the 5G disrupts the blood-brain barrier. That means that more and more toxins get in the brain, and so it's affecting our brain function on a whole other level, which is the different toxins, the free radicals, all that is disrupting our brain function from this other biological level. So it's a lose-lose-lose until we decide to go win-win-win, which is really up to us saying this is really important. I don't care how selfish you are, all life on the planet and your life and the life of your children is all under threat. So we have to try really, really hard to get people to wake up to this.
How many have seen the photographs of the dead bees, the dead birds? In the state of California, they believe some of the recent fires were caused by these towers.